All right. Before you press play on anything else today, I need to say this straight up in the beginning because it truly matters. If you have not listened to episode 196, it's the bill that always comes due. Stop this episode right now and you need to go listen to that one first. Real clear, so that otherwise you're going to have no concept of what we are going to be talking about today. So I'm not saying that to pad my downloads of numbers, which ironically is pretty cool that I'm coming up to episode number 200, which is going to be pretty amazing. But I give you the 3 tests today to tell the difference between real discernment and fear wearing a wisdom costume. All right. I was just scrolling today and spent a little time on scrolling because I like to see if I got any good clients that maybe could use some help, some guidance. And I saw one that really stuck out to me is they're just struggling with their faith. And this episode is really going to help you. I'm going to give you today the 4-step CEO framework for how a leader actually moves through uncertainty. When you get to that crossroads, that part of your life where, man, it's tough. I don't know what to do, how to do, where to go. If you skip straight forward or skip straight to today's episode without that foundation prior, you're going to kind of get 3 great tools and have no idea why to use them or even when to use them. I hope that truly makes sense. Now that's like, it's like handing a man a hammer, a level, and a saw with like no blueprint. And I know nothing about that kind of manly stuff. We're going to be totally transparent, but I feel that that's really important. In fact, I'm going to be putting together a nice, it's going to be nice, a nice patio up front, almost like a deck of sorts. So I'm going to need to get a hammer. I'm going to need to get a level, but I also need to have a blueprint before I can get to that. So go get that blueprint first is what I'm saying. That's on episode 196. And then come on back. All right. So for those of you that did your homework, which was episode 196, let's go. Let's get into it. Today I'm going to give you 3 exact moves, 3 specifics, science-backed, psychology-rooted strategies you can use the next time you feel yourself in a frozen situation on a decision-making decision process, right? I call that about decision debt. This is not a theory. In fact, my clients pay me or give me an investment to prove that this works, and I walk them through this. And I'm giving this absolutely to you today for no cost other than the download. Well, maybe if you really got something out of it, hit that subscribe button, share it with 5 of your friends, because today is going to be epic and monumental. All right, again, no theory, psychology-based, science-backed, faith-based, proven, because I am part of everything that I teach all of to my clients and to all of my listeners out there. So it's not just praying about it harder. Often we get into situations where people are like, well, what do you need? I just need you to pray. Now, prayer, I'm not diminishing prayer. Prayer is, I did an entire episode on this. Prayer is very, very important to the building of our foundation, becoming more aligned with Jesus Christ in all areas of life. That's our mind, our body, and our soul. I'm talking about actual mechanisms while we are here on this planet Earth, even for it's a short time. It actually how your brain gets stuck and the exact lever you pull to get it unstuck. So if you like this stuff, keep listening, because I'm going to drop some really goodies for you today. We're going to go deep, and I'm talking deep. Is there a song that goes after that? Deep in the, I don't know, but we're going deep. I'm going to teach you step by step with real scenarios and real objections that you've already had forming in your head, maybe framing in your head exactly how this plays out in your exact living situation. Maybe you're in your living room. Maybe it's an actual business. Maybe it's your actual marriage. Maybe it's a big thing that just happened in your life that is scary, right? So this is part 2 of decision debt. It's the final chapter. So let's build it up. So a quick bridge. So we're all standing on the same ground together. I want to break this down for you for a second. I don't want anyone half listening to this commute to miss the thorough timeline on all of this. All right. So if you go back a few episodes, episode 196 was we named the problem, which was decision debt, the interest where you're silently paying every time you avoid maybe a call, maybe a conversation, maybe an investment opportunity, wherever it may be, because I told you all about D. I told you all about him. All right. The business owner who sat on a decision for 2 years because he was waiting to feel sure, right? I told you certainty never comes before the decision, and it comes after you make the move. In fact, I was on a client call earlier this past week, and one of the strategies that I use to them is when they get into a situation where they are not feeling comfortable with themselves and they're in a decision debt, it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, move. Maybe it's move to another room. Maybe it's do a different exercise, whatever it might be. Maybe it's unload the dishwasher as I'm looking across to see it right now because I'm in a different place in my household today. So, are you ready? It comes after you move. And I talked about that in the previous episode. I'm going to give you today the diagnostic tools, the 3 proven tests, and I want you to do these. And then I want you to go back to my comments and I want you to comment on how they worked in your life because I know for a fact it will change it. 3 tests: timeline, new information, honest consult, or honest mirror transparency, honest, which I call. So to know if you're actually discerning or just stalling. Two big different words from different sides of the pendulum here, right? And the 4-step CEO framework that I'm going to give to you: define the cost of inaction. We're going to set a deadline, decide, and just lead your household through it all out loud. You ready for this? Because here's the disease. There's a disease. And in episode 196, here's how you know if you have it. And here's the actual treatment plan. Today, I'm going to kind of be like the pharmacy. And if many of you can see, I have this weird tape on my finger. It is literally masking tape. I think it's masking tape or some type of tape. But underneath it, again, I'm sharing this with you because this is kind of vital for what I'm talking about, because today I'm going to kind of be the pharmacy for you. But anyway, I've got a wart. And the wart stinks. And I got the wart tape around it. And then I put the masking tape over it so I can seal it. Anyway, it's a long process and it's tedious and it stinks. However, today I want to be your pharmacy. And here's how I'm going to be your pharmacy, because this part is really, really important. All right. Because there's 3 tests that I talked about. All right. So here's how you know if you have it. And here's the treatment plan. Hopefully you don't get a wart like I do, but today I'm going to be the pharmacy and tell you how, because I'm going to give you 3 specific tools to teach you how to get out of decision debt. Proven strategies. It will proven. In fact, I want you to comment about it because this is how excited I am about it. So reach for in the moment your hand is literally hovering over the decision and you feel that tightness in your chest telling you, and what is it saying? Just wait. Don't do it. It's that long pause, right? And I've had this myself, and it can be really detrimental to you for growth perspective. So before I'm going to hand you the tools per se, I need you to understand why you freeze to begin with. All right? This is why you freeze to begin with. Because if you don't understand the mechanism, these strategies are going to feel basically like tricks. And the second life gets hard. You abandon then the trick, you stop movement, which is then leads to no longer momentum. I talked entirely about that. You won't abandon something if you actually understand it, right? So let me kind of break this down. Why your brain actually freezes. Are you ready for this? Because here's what's happening in your head especially when you get stuck. Because when you get stuck, especially on a decision, you want to slow down and explain this situation, right? And I'm gonna do it myself. I'm gonna slow it down for you. I think most men have never had this explained to them in a way that actually makes sense. So I'm gonna do my very best to explain them to all of my listeners to you. All right. They've only ever heard just be more disciplined, right? Just be more disciplined. Suck it up. That's useless advice. And if you don't know what you're disciplining, that's the biggest thing. If you don't know what you're disciplining, that's a problem. Your brain has a threat detection system. Okay? It's the amygdala. Okay? Sitting deep in what's sometimes called, I believe it's the limbic system. The older, the faster part of your brain. It doesn't distinguish well between a lion chasing me and I might disappoint my business partner, or my wife might be upset with this choice that I made. Both register as danger. Both get flagged for the same emergency response. When facing a big decision, especially one with rational or financial risk attached, that threat system lights up and starts flooding your body with stress hormones. Those stress hormones are cortisol, adrenaline. What happens to your heart rate? It ticks up, it speeds up, right? And then your muscles start to tense. And some men feel this in their chest. Maybe even some men feel it in their gut, and some even get it in their jaw, right? So meanwhile, the frontal cortex of your brain, right behind your forehead, is this part right here. The part of your brain is responsible for reasoning, long-range planning, like weighing outcomes, considering your values. That's the part that should be leading the decision. However, under a strong enough threat response, okay, the amygdala effectively hijacks the process. Here's what I mean. Blood flow and processing priorities shift away from the clear reasoning towards pure threat avoidance. This isn't a metaphor. This is actually measurable and observable brain activity. In fact, I believe researchers sometimes call it the hijack syndrome, right? It's a term coined by, I think, a psychologist. Let me pull up my notes here really quick. Yeah, his name was Daniel Goleman, describing exactly this: emotional threat response completely overriding rational, deliberate thought in real time. In plain English, simple English, or my plain language, the more emotionally loaded a decision is, the less access you have to your best thinking mechanism. And right when you need it the most. So I want you to actually sit with that for a second, because here's the trap most men fall into. You feel frozen on a decision and your instinct is to think, right? I need to think about this more. However, if you already have that amygdala hijacked situation, more thinking doesn't help you. You're not actually accessing your reasoning brain. You're just recycling the same fear loop that's been over and over and just dressed up as what I call processing. And that's why you lay in bed and you have the running of the same 5 sentences going through your head for the 150th time. And then you wake up with zero new clarity. You know, you weren't thinking. You were on that endless merry-go-round that I talk about. You were spinning out of control, really. And you know what? That's not a character flaw, y'all. This is not you being weak by any means, or even spiritually unsatisfied or not spiritually full. It's not even man enough. Whatever lie you keep telling yourself in the mirror, maybe it's at 1 a.m., this is actual biology. Yeah, it's biology. Every man listening to this has a nervous system that will do this to him. The CEO is running a 9-figure company. The pastor, the special forces veteran, just everyone, insert your title. The question was never, how do I stop this amygdala thing from ever firing up? You just cannot. It's not a bug. It's a feature that's built inside all of us. And it's actually kept, if we go to history, it's actually kept our ancestors alive. And the real question is, what specific moves pull you back into that prefrontal cortex situation? Back into clear, value-driven thinking, right? Fast enough to actually make a decision. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom. That's what these 3 strategies do. Each one is different. It almost has a different level on the same mechanism. And they're not competing for against each other. They're aimed just at different 3 entry points into the same problem. All right? So let me kind of break that down for you. First, it's the 24-hour ultimatum. Okay? So what exactly is this? Well, it's the momentum you notice you're circling a decision. Same thoughts, same worry, new information actually coming in. You give yourself a hard external deadline. Not soon, not this week, 24 hours. You say it out loud, or better, you say it to another person. I'm deciding this by tomorrow at blah, 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 blah. Right? Why 24 hours specifically? You ever think about that? Well, the psychology perspective behind it is open-ended deadlines let that threat system keep circling indefinitely. So there's no forcing function. So the amygdala just keeps recycling the same fear loop. And you experience that is still thinking about it when really you're just marinating in cortisol with nothing to show for it. A hard, specific near-term deadline does something different. It converts an open loop into a closed one. You with me so far? Because here's the thing. Behavioral researchers refer to this as, I believe it's called the deadline effect. Studies on procrastination and task completion consistently show that ambiguous, distant deadlines produce avoidance, while specific, measurable, near-term deadlines produce measurable spike in action oriented by this organ, the brain's activity. Your brain treats an approaching hard deadline as a different category of threat than an ambiguous ongoing worry, right? One that actually mobilizes decision movement instead of avoidance. That's why you had the experience of avoiding a task for 3 weeks to knocking it out the last 2 hours before it's due, right? How many of you did that? College me, undergrad me, master program me, Sunday night blues. Every Monday I had my master's program. I would knock out a 10 to 12, maybe even sometimes 15-page paper. Stressed. Would literally watch football all day and then spend that evening doing the paper. The deadline itself changed your brain state. You didn't suddenly become a different, more disciplined man. The structure changed, and so did your behavior. Your behavior followed it. So why saying it out loud matters? Saying it to another person, you know what it does? It adds accountability weight. Now, the discomfort of not deciding includes a second cost. The social cost of giving back on your word, right? So for a man who's wired to protect his integrity, and most of the men I coach are that they want to protect their identity, that added weight is often the exact push that outweighs the fear. This is why men who tell no one about their goals rarely hit them. And men who tell one trusted person, friend, colleague, adult, whatever it might be, almost always move faster. You're not weak for needing that. You're just wired for a community and accountability. In fact, I want to tie in a little bit of scripture here. Scripture names this directly. It's called iron sharpens iron. It isn't just a nice metaphor, y'all. It's a design principle. How it actually, I'm going to actually run it by you now, step by step. So if you're taking notes, here's exactly the framework. It's 4 steps, simple, easy, effective. Here you go. Let me grab a quick drink here. So name the exact decision in one sentence. Not figure out my business situation. Too vague. It's not going to stop that endless loop. Decide whether I'm ending the partnership with fill in the blank. That was one. Number two, set the exact deadline. Now, here is what is absolutely important is you need to have a specific day and time, not this week, tomorrow. Maybe it's Thursday by 5 p.m. Number three, say it out loud to one person who will actually hold you onto it, not someone you'll let you off the hook, or if you show up on Friday still undecided. Maybe it's your wife. Man, Amber does an immense I love this because I do this the same exact. She doesn't even understand what I'm doing, but I will say to her, I need this by this time. I will say these out loud. She has held me accountable in so many times, so many ways. I love her. She's awesome. All right. Side note, plug. Hopefully she'll love me for that. So if again, number three, say it out loud to one person will actually hold you to it. So, and maybe it's your wife, maybe it's your coaching client, maybe it's somebody else, maybe it's a peer, maybe it's me, maybe it's just one of your guys. Number four, when the deadline hits, you decide. Even if the decision is, I'm choosing to wait, and here's specifically why, and here's my new deadline. The rule isn't you must choose the bold option. The rule is you must choose something and stop the open loop. I want to give you a real scenario for a second. In fact, I had a client, and I'm just going to call him Rolf. All right. And, we'd be sitting on whether to confront his father-in-law about a boundary issue involving how he spoke to his kids. So 8 months of, I'll bring it up next time when we're together, 8 months of tension building every time the family got together. I told him, run the 24-hour ultimatum. So he told his wife, I believe it was on a Tuesday night, I'm calling your dad by Thursday at noon. Nothing about the actual content of the conversation changed in those 2 days. What changed was his nervous system. You with me so far? Now it had an endpoint instead of an infinite loop, right? He made the call. The call was uncomfortable. We shared about it on our call. Decisions worth making usually are, y'all, right? And the 8-month wait came off that Thursday, I believe it was. Not because the outcome was perfect. It was the open loop finally closed. So here is what the CEO looks like of the house in live to thrive terms, all right? You don't march into the kitchen and announce, I'm giving myself a 24 ultimatum, like you're ready for a corporate memo. You simply just tell your wife, hey, I've been sitting on this conversation with my business partner. I'm calling him tomorrow by noon. That's it. See how small it was? It was quiet. It was effective. And what it does, it closes the loop and it lets your wife or significant other see you leading instead of stewing. Men, you get where I'm saying here? This is why you lead. So over time, that's what rebuilds a wife's confidence in her husband's leadership. And it's not one grand gesture. However, it's a pattern of closed loops instead of open ones. So objection, I hear consistently on many clients that I have. But what if 24 hours isn't enough time to actually get me more information? Hear that often. And that's fair. And that's exactly why the previous episodes, second test matters. And here, the new information test. If there's generally new information coming, a report, a number, a conversation you own, your deadline accounts for that. I'm deciding within 24 hours of receiving, that's right, receiving this inspection report, for instance. The point was never to be reckless. The point was to remove the infinite, ambiguous version of waiting and replacing it with a bounded, intentional use. Does that make sense? All right. If it doesn't, make sure you email me at michael@live2thrive. That's LIV, the number 2 thrive. If you got questions about that. Again, if you're truly enjoying this podcast so far, give me a 5-star rating. Send it to 5 of your friends. Maybe they'll help you or help them in this direction. All right. Here is my second strategy. And I said I was giving you 3, so here it is. What is it? This one is a visualization technique that I use often. And it's rooted in something that psychologists call prospective-hindsight. Essentially, imagine you're looking back at a decision from the future changes how your brain evaluates the risk right now. This isn't new age fluff. This is actual research that goes back many, many decades. When people mentally time travel forward and evaluate choice, and if it's already happened and it's been resolved, they access a completely different, calmer part of their reasoning than when they are evaluating the same choice sitting inside the present moment, what I call fear. With me? It's related to a concept researchers call temporal distancing. The further away in imagined time you place yourself from a stressor, the less that stressor activates your threat response. And the more reasoning your brain, that prefrontal cortex we talked about, gets to actually participate. And here's how to actually run it step by step. There's 4 steps. Here they are. Find a quiet minute. And this doesn't need to be a big ceremonial thing like Michael Hicks likes to do. No, it doesn't need to be like that. Just close your eyes and just soften your focus for maybe 30 or 60 seconds. And then number 2, picture yourself 10 years from now. Not vaguely, detailed, microscopically specific. Maybe you're a little bit grayer. I know I am. A little bit more lines on the face. Get them all right in here. Maybe your kiddos are older. Maybe you're a grandfather. Not yet. It cannot be. That would be too soon for me. Maybe you're a business. Maybe your business looks completely different. Make it vivid. You get what I'm saying? Number 3, picture that older version of you sitting across the table from the man you are today, like right now, mid-decision. Maybe you're stuck. And then number 4, the older version of you has already lived through whatever happens next. In fact, he knows how it turned out. And it's probably going to be hard. If it is hard, it's going to be worth it. Whether the fear you're feeling right now mattered in that long term. And then ask one question out loud if you can. Say it out loud. Did you respect me more for making that call or for waiting? That's powerful stuff. And almost every single time that we address that, you know what happens? I mean, every time I've walked a client through this process, the answer is immediate. The elder version of you doesn't care about the business deal that might have gone sideways. He doesn't care about the conversations might have been awkward and the risk might not have paid off exactly as you planned. What he remembers, what he actually respects is whether or not you made the move. You get where I'm going here? This tracks with huge, consistent body of research on regret. When people are surveyed later in life about the biggest regrets, that overwhelming majority are regrets of inaction, not action. Let me tell you a story here really quick. My daughter loves volleyball. And I know it's for a short opportunity, a short time that I get to coach her. I know when she gets to high school, I just don't have the knowledge to coach at that level yet. I coach basketball professionally. I worked myself up for many years to do that. However, I had the opportunity to coach her. Why wouldn't I take that opportunity? You know, we remember the risks we didn't take far more painfully and for far longer than the ones that didn't pan out. And regret in the long run is almost never about the risk you took. It's about the ones you never did. And here's why this works on a brain level. All right. Distancing yourself from the present emotional stakes, like literally stepping into a future vantage point measurably reduces that amygdala activation in studies using the kind of imagined distance techniques. You're not evaluating the decision from inside the threat anymore. You're evaluating it from a place of already resolved safety, because in the visualization, the hard part is already over. And that's enough of a shift to let that prefrontal cortex that I talked about back into the driver's seat, even if after a few minutes you need to get honest clarity on what you actually want. Here's a real scenario that I want to run you through. One of my clients was agonizing over whether to leave a stable, well-paying job to start a business he'd been talking about for about 6, maybe it was even 7 years. Every practical spreadsheet level argument said it's too risky, right? And when I had him run the elder in the room exercise and picture himself at retirement age looking back, he didn't even hesitate. He said, he's disappointed I waited as long as I did. No one sentence did more for his clarity in 60 seconds than for 4 months of working with me one-on-one. Because we listed out the pros and cons immediately. And here's the faith perspective. For the men in this audience that are walking with faith and in their alignment with Jesus Christ, this isn't separate from about what Scripture talks about. It talks about wisdom. In fact, Proverbs talks again and again about the man who thinks ahead, who considers his ways, who plans for the harvest before the season demands it. The elder in the room isn't a trick or a gimmick borrowed from a self-help stage. It's a discipline of foresight that's been pointing men towards wisdom for, I don't know, thousands of years. And we're just naming the mechanism in language that also happens to line up with what modern psychology has confirmed for us. It's crazy, right? So here's what I get backlash on consistently. This feels like I'm talking myself into whatever I already wanted to do. Maybe, yes. And that's actually useful information, because that elder in the room exercise consistently points you towards the bold move. And that tells you something about where your gut already is, right? Underneath all of that fear. However, run it honestly in both directions on a real decision, and you'll notice it doesn't always push you towards the bigger choice. Sometimes that elder version of you is relieved you didn't take a reckless risk. This isn't a bias towards action for its own sake. It's actually a tool for assessing your own long-range values instead of the short-range fear. Does that make sense? All right. I want to give you my third strategy. This is the 1% better move. This is by far very effective. So what is it, Michael? Well, this one I give the men who are so frozen that they cannot even engage with strategies 1 and 2. Yet, because sometimes the decision in front of you is generally massive, and your brain isn't wrong to feel the size of it. In those most cases, attempting to decide the whole thing in one sitting is actually the trap that keeps you stuck longer, right? Here's the mechanism that I want to share with you. Your threat system responds to the perceived size of the decision, not necessarily its actual complexity. A decision that feels like, should I blow up my career, registers as one enormous, undifferentiated threat. And that brain's evolved response to an enormous, undifferentiated threat is to freeze, right? That's actually the same mechanism behind why a deer stops moving in the headlights rather than running. When the danger is too big or unclear to map a specific response to it, the nervous system defaults to, yes, stillness, right? And that's not laziness. It's just an ancient survival mode response misfiring on a modern problem. Let me run through it to you step by step, all right? So really write this down, because this is going to be really effective for your decision depth. So the whole thing version. So let's just say this. leave my business partnership, fix my marriage, get my finances under control. So whatever your decision is, right? Then ask, what is the smallest possible action that I can take in the next 24 hours that moves us forward by even 1%? Not the whole thing, just a sliver of it. Okay? Number 3, make that action absurdly small if you have to. Not have the hard conversation with my business partner. That's still the whole mountain, right? Instead, send the text, I should say, asking for 15 minutes to talk with that person this week. Not fixing my marriage. Instead of asking, maybe it's your wife who you can sit down on a Friday night, no phones, nothing, get your finances under control. Instead, open the bank account and just look at the number today without acting on it. And number 4, do that one small thing, nothing else. And let that be enough for the day. You got to give yourself grace. We are not machines. I've got to take that advice. I've got clients that need to take that advice. One small thing is enough. And number 5, I want you to notice. And this is the part that most men skip, that taking the small action changes how the big decision feels afterward. It almost always feels smaller once you're not staring at it from a dead stop. Are you with me so far? Awesome. So let me break down the psychology behind all this. This is grounded in behavioral activation, a well-established clinical study approach for breaking paralysis, whether that paralysis comes from insert anxiety, depression, maybe simple overwhelmingness, anxiousness, all that stuff. The core finding behind behavior action activation is counterintuitive to how most men think about motivation. Action changes emotional state faster than thinking does. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, move. Right? I talked about that. Most of us wait to feel motivated or clear before we move. However, research consistently shows it works in the other order. Okay? You take the smallest next action, the clarity and the motivation follow the action, not the reverse. This is the same principle I mentioned in my previous episode. Clarity shows up after the foot is already on the path. The 1% move is how you get your foot moving in the first place, when the whole path feels too big to even look at directly. I want to give you a real scenario of a man that I coached who had been avoiding a full financial audit of his household for over a year. Debt he hadn't told his wife about. Real numbers were there. Every time he attempted to sit down and deal with it, the size of the whole problem froze him before he opened up to a single statement moment. I had him do this one thing, simple. Open one account. Write down one number. Close the laptop. That was it. In 2 minutes, he did it. And within a week, without me even pushing him further, he had opened up 3 more accounts to his own and scheduled the conversation with his wife. The size of that mountain never changed, right? His relationship to it did, because he was no longer standing completely still at the base of it. Now, here's what the CEO of the house does. I'm giving you the application piece. This is the application piece. Leadership at your home is rarely one big heroic decision. Despite what movies tell us, what the secular world does, all this stuff, we get hung up in all this political uproar, right? Whether you're for someone or against him, it's 1,000 small next actions. And you make them consistently that your family experiences stability over time. You don't need to solve the entire thing in one night. You need to make the next move tonight. That's it. That's what leadership is. Practice in the actual size it actually comes in. So here's an objection that I often hear. Isn't this just avoiding the real decision by doing something small and calling it progress? Nope, it's not. And here's the distinction. Avoiding is doing something unrelated to the decision to feel busy. Cleaning the garage instead of having the hard conversation. The 1% move is doing something directly in the path of the real decision, just maybe scaled down. The test is simple. Does a small action move the action decision forward? Maybe even slightly. If yes, I talk a lot about this. It's momentum. If no, it's a distraction wearing a productive costume, right? So here's how we're going to habit stack all three of those. So if you're jotting notes, here's a good time to do that. Because here's how these three will work together. Because you don't need to overthink which one to use in a particular moment. If you're stuck circling with no new information coming in, that's strategy one. It's the 24-hour ultimatum. Close the laptop with the hard deadline. Or close the loop, I should say, not the laptop. Close the loop with the hard deadline. Specifically in fear for regret, fear of what people may think, fear of what outcome itself, that's strategy number two. It's the elder in the room. Get the future perspective that shrinks the present fear down to the size, right? And if the decision itself just feels too big to even approach, that's strategy three that I talked about, the 1% better move. Shrink the decision until it's small enough to act on today. And here's the sequence I actually walk my clients through on the decisions that matter most. The ones that change the trajectory of business or marriage, elder in the room first to get clear on what actually you want underneath that fear. The 1% move, 1% better move. That's a move that can be done in seconds to get moving without needing that whole picture solved. And then that 24-hour ultimatum, which is the third one, to close it out once you're close. That's the full stack. That's stacking them all together. It's a trifecta, right? You need all these threes on every decision you make. Most days, one tool is just enough. However, on the decisions that have been sitting on you for months and years, and you've got this empty pit of something that's really you're struggling with, and maybe even got a clarity call with Michael Hicks, and you were like, man, your value is right, and it's pointing out the process, but I got to wait longer. So watch how fast that fog clears when you insert those systems. Now, here's what I want to do for you this week. I want to leave you with this. So I want you to pick one decision that's been sitting on you for the longest time. The one you already know deep down inside, said empty pit. The second I said just pick one, I know you ran through 100 of them first, right? Just pick one small, safe practice. And that safe practice decision to test these tools on. Use them on the real ones. That's the only way you'll know if they work. All right? And if they don't work, email me at Michael. I don't give a rap. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. Pastor Craig does that. It's pretty funny in his sermons. But anyway, if you're sitting there right now thinking, Michael, I know exactly which decision this is, and I've known it for months. It's not on accident. That's 3 episodes deep of this landing in you for a reason. This is exactly the work that I do with men, one-on-one inside my coaching practice. And it's not just naming decision. It's not just handing you tools in a podcast episode. However, walking beside you while you run through these exact strategies in real time, in real situation with someone in your corner holding the deadline for you. And when you get your own resolve waivers an hour later. If you're done paying interest, that debt decision I talked about, and you already need to make a decision, you can go to michael@livetothrive.com. That is my email. Or if you just Google Live to Thrive, LIV, the number 2 Thrive, Michael Hicks. Maybe let's close that account together. And if these last few series really meant something to you, I started this probably in 193-ish, all the way to now. This is 197. Do me a favor, send it to 3 of your men in your life or friends in your life who've been sitting on a decision, who no longer know what to do. And it's not to call them out. It's to build identity, purpose, restoration. Because that's how we move, friends. If you truly resonated with you, love you guys all so much. I hope you got so much good stuff out of this. That is what I'm here to do, is give more clarity to you. Through my pain, I discovered bigger and better purpose. And as always, 1% better in mind, body, and soul. And always stay flexed.